So today we go, the presentations today is about the exercises in new languages. So we follow yesterday's, the previous day's presentation. We go more deeply into various ways of inculcating the exercises in the contemporary culture today through audiovisual media, ecological awareness, and also inclusion of the body. So this morning we will have a free presentation. So the first presentation is spiritual exercises and the new languages. The presentation will be done in English. So let me introduce Father NIKOLAAS SINTOBIN. He joined the Society of Jesus in 1989 after a short career as a lawyer. He was trained as a Jesuit in Brussels, Paris, and Santiago de Chile. He served as a school chaplain, teacher, and spiritual guide, specialized in Jesuit spirituality and pedagogy. Currently, he's living in Amsterdam, and his main assignment is the media, more particular in internet. So I pass the time to you, Nicholas.
Thank you. Good morning, all of you. So I will share with you something about my experience as an internet chaplain. I call myself an internet chaplain. As far as I know, I am the only Jesuit doing so. I do not know of a second Jesuit calling himself an internet chaplain. I think there should be more. I would like to share with you, or to start sharing with you, an quite amazing experience I had some years ago. I think for most of you it will be surprising. For some of you it might be shocking. I will show you a trailer. I don't hear anything. The sound is important. Could you please put on the sound? Okay. Could you please
Far from the noise of everyday life, 5 celebrity women face the challenge of their life. In silence, they will live in a monastery for a week, in search of God. The 5 celebrities, all non-believers, completely immerse themselves in the monastic life. No greater contrast is conceivable. They read the Bible, follow the communal prayers.
Alles is zo weeg en zo soft en zo.
Eat with the community. Do the dishes and sleep in monastic cells.
Heftig zo dan, die crucifix.
Ik weet niet, ik vind het niet cool om te zeggen ik geloof in God.
The 5 women follow an Ignatian silent retreat for 7 days in an old abbey. They are not allowed to talk or to have any contact with the outside world. Every day they have a 1-hour personal talk with their spiritual counselor, who guides them in their search for God.
So 10 years ago, indeed, I was asked to participate as a spiritual director in 2 series of professional reality TV. It was an initiative of a Dutch television group, Evangelicals. And in concrete terms, we gave spiritual exercises to Dutch celebrities for 1 week in a monastery, in silence, without mobile phones, all the conditions of a normal retreat. And everything was normal, except that there were 35 professionals of the television who were around all over the place, 24 hours a day, and everything was recorded. everything, even in the rooms. So in the private rooms, there were small cameras they could use, the participants or the retreatants. The encounters for spiritual guidance, there was such a big camera, you see it, that was there, and somebody for the sound with a big microphone like that. And the results of it were 2 series of 5 programs of reality television that were amazing, amazing. It was beautiful. So the music, the images, it was very tense because there was a lot of drama in it. That's the professional television makers who could do so. But in the first place, it was really authentically profound. It was very, very deep. And hundreds of thousands of people looked at it because it was broadcasted in prime time on the Dutch public television. Hundreds of thousands of people looked at it because they were celebrities. People did not in the first place look because of the spiritual thing, but because they wanted to see what the celebrities were going through. But through the process of identification, of course, they personally also went through a process. For me, this experience was probably the most impactful apostolic experience of my whole Jesuit life. I could never imagine that one day I would do reality television. But one of the things it taught me is that creative audacity also, and in particular in the pastoral field, is possible and is necessary. And that it can be useful, and that maybe it is necessary nowadays to dare to imagine things that have never been done before. And that it can make sense to question sacred cows in the process. For instance, to register an encounter of spiritual guidance. I know very well the French Jesuits, they were shocked. Many of them were shocked. How is it possible? That's not possible. We did it. And last winter, they invited me, the French Jesuits, to talk about it on their meeting, just a meeting like this one. They changed a little bit. So, just as an example of what is possible, this is a very particular experience. Of course, it costed a lot of money, more than €1 million. You can imagine that's absolutely exceptional. But, well, just as an introduction, now I would like to show you some examples from my own experience as an internet chaplain. Examples inspired by the spiritual exercises. And then I will discuss 5 rules of digital language, because that was the subject, the new languages, 5 rules of digital language. First, I will show you 3 practical examples of websites and other initiatives we have. I am a blogger, and blogging made me discover YouTube in a new way. And I made a website called Seeing More. It's in several languages, seeingmore.org, on which you have hundreds and hundreds of similar videos. Videos of visual storytelling. Visual storytelling, which has probably become the major literary genre in contemporary communication. TikTok, for instance, which is one of the main social platforms today, is an equivalent or is a synonym of visual storytelling. And the reason for this is very simple. The visual storytelling provides an almost immediate direct access to the interiority, to the place where the religious experience takes place. And we know that in the history of Christianity, that has been used from the beginning on. And Ignatius discovered it on his own sickbed here, in Loyola, and gave it a place in the Ignatian prayer. And YouTube has a tremendous potential here. So I have made a collection of YouTubes that can be used for all kinds of Ignatian prayer. I have given retreats to monks using this kind of YouTubes. In our retreat house, we have each year a retreat, silent retreats, biblical text introductions, personal guidance, and so on. And the first evening, we have a guided meditation using such YouTubes. And during the rest of the retreat, many of the participants during the spiritual guidance talk about what such videos and the prayer you can do with it, provoke, make with them. All these clips meet, or the clips I have chosen, there are thousands of hours of work in making that collection. All these clips meet 4 criteria that say a lot of the digital language, and you will see they are completely inspired by the pedagogy of the spiritual exercises. They are all short, very short, sometimes only 5 seconds or 7 seconds. Because in the digital environment, everything must go fast. And the advantage of a visual story is that you can give a lot of input in a very short time. And you, of course, know that Ignatius likes that. Second, all of the YouTubes I use are secular, purely secular, because we live in a secular culture. We speak secular, we think secular. I myself live in Amsterdam. It's a purely secular environment. And secular images give a feeling of home, of recognition. The threshold is much lower than with the traditional Christian iconography. Almost all of the videos I use are without words, or hardly any words, or if there are words, the words are simply there as a kind of noise to fill the silence, which means immediately that it allows the viewer to fill in himself and to use his own words. And by definition, I refuse clips that are compulsory, that impose one interpretation. They must be open. And even if there is a message in it and the message is opposite to what, for instance, I use a cartoon that suggests there is no resurrection, but it suggests it in such a way that you can disagree. Okay, that's perfect. I can use that video because people are free to interpret and to position themselves with regard to that video. It's an example of using the means of that internet provides us, and probably in a more or less unexpected way, for all kinds of Ignatian prayer. The second example is an example you are probably all familiar with, the prayer podcasts. The podcast is one of the formats, the digital formats, that is growing very, very fast today. Everybody makes podcasts because indeed it is so efficient and so interesting. And we all know the network that is ever growing of Ignatian prayer podcasts started by the British, Pray As You Go. Here you have all the languages that exist by now. It's an all-inclusive offer of Ignatian Bible prayer that is indeed very user-friendly, because you do not have to read or to look at anything. You can just do it when walking, in the train, at home, under the shower, whenever. And that sense of freedom, of choosing when, where, and how I want to do it is very important today. People want to choose, to be able to choose, to decide for themselves. And also the fact that you can do it by your own, and you can do it in an anonymous way. You can do it in the train, you can do it in the bus. Nobody knows you are praying. And in the West, that can be, in our countries here, that can be important. Podcasts. Third example, digital retreats. During Advent and Lent, we have been offering now for 7-8 years a digital Bible retreat, Ignatian of course, following the dynamics of the spiritual exercises. So people receive each day during Advent or during 40 days of Lent an email with a complete proposition of prayer, with also some technical suggestions and some catechetical input and some quotes of theologians or of catechists or other people, and so on. And bridges are also included, built in, to bring participants together to exchange in a physical environment, from digital to physical, even if that passage is quite difficult and delicate. It's a very interesting format because it's very cheap, and it allows to reach out to many, many people. In our small language group of the Dutch, we have now each year more than 20,000 participants. And it altogether costs around 2,000 euros. So you can imagine. It's only a fraction of what the daily podcast, the prayer podcast, costs to us. Now I would like to focus on the digital language and how to be present in the digital environment. And I think it's very important for all of us, because the digital experience, due to the digital transition, which is global now and which covers almost all aspects of our lives, also of our spiritual life, is becoming normative for all kinds of things, also in the physical environment. So the influence of it can hardly be exaggerated. First aspect, the surfer is the boss. When I am on internet, I am in the center of internet, and I decide on what I'm going to do, where I will go, how long I will stay there. The surfer is right. No discussion about it. This means, for instance, that it is necessary to have a variety of propositions, because the surfer wants to choose, wants to decide for himself. Also in the spiritual field, and if you don't, the surfer will go away. You will look elsewhere. At the same time, and that's important, and we do not yet realize that at all in the Christian world, well, we know that a lot of techniques are being used to manipulate the surfer, to convince him to come to my website and not to the other website. But this brings us to the subject of marketing. Almost 10 years ago, we got the visit in our retreat house, in our spiritual center in Amsterdam, of Father NIKOLAAS, Adolfo NIKOLAAS. And he said, and I quote him literally, he said, we have to be salesmen with our products. Salesmen. I will give you, I will illustrate what that means, what decisions we have taken because of that. But he used the word salesman. In recent years, a professional digital spiritual wellness industry, so a wellness industry on a high professional level, has developed. And commercial as it is, it markets, so it sells its products in a very professional way. And it means that commercial groups are rapidly conquering the digital religious market. We used to have the monopoly, and now a lot of other actors are acting in that market in a much more professional way than we do. For 2 years now, we have been doing in our spirituality center professional digital marketing by directly responding to the surface search behavior. Following the culture of autonomy I just mentioned, the surfer wants to be able to make his own choices. Well, if you, in the Dutch-speaking area, if you go on Google and you search for Bible prayer, our Bible podcast, our prayer podcast, will be among the first shown. That's simply a marketing technique we use. And the result is simply spectacular. That means that in 2 years' time, the number of users of our prayer podcast has increased by 300%. It has tripled. It has tripled. While for 3 or 4 years, it hardly evolved. Marketing costs a lot of money, but in all, it costs only a fraction, or at least much less, than what internet ministry itself costs. So our board has decided 2 years ago that marketing would be the first priority for the coming years in our spirituality center. Not developing new products, but investing in selling, if you want, even though all our products are free, but by selling in the market our products. Second thing, the internet is a secular environment. And this particularly requires an adapted use of words, an adapted vocabulary that is understandable for the average surfer. Our Ignatian, and more broadly Christian tradition has a lot of jargon, and jargon is wonderful because it allows to express very refined and subtle things. There's only one problem: almost nobody understands it. And so people feel excluded. People simply do not understand what you are talking about. I have recently published a book on Ignatian discernment for the Jubilee, and I have really made a big effort to avoid all jargon. Discernment of spirits. My goodness, you are strange people. And consolation. Are you really so, how do you say, triste, sad that you need to be consoled all the time? And indifference, my goodness, you are an indifferent person. Blah, I don't like that at all. Even the word humility is, in my language, is a problematic word. And we get the most positive feedback from practicing Christians from the inner circle of the church who say, thank you, because you provide us with a vocabulary I can use when I talk with my colleagues or with my friends who are not Christian, because the words you use, people understand them. That's not a detail. I think that's really a fundamental thing of inculturation. Third, the digital trinity consists of speed, change, and creativity. The attention span, and that's largely due to internet, has shortened dramatically, not only for children, also for us grown-ups. On average, a surfer spends 2 minutes on an internet page. And in the first seconds, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, he decides whether or not to stay on, to read, to look at the video or not. It's a matter of a few seconds. That means that the pulpit model with which we are so familiar does not work on internet. When you are preaching in a church, you can preach for 5 minutes, you can preach for 15 minutes. People are obliged to listen to you. Well, not on internet. It's important to realize the catechism model doesn't work either on internet. People do not want a complete answer. They just have one particular interest and they want something about that. So completeness, as in the catechism, is not necessary. 5 minutes left. Change. Our culture changed at an incredible rate. It has never changed that rapidly, and in the future, it will never change so slowly as today. That's witticism, but when in 2007 I started on Facebook, my old pupils, my old boys said, hey, create a Jesuit on Facebook. Now those young people have long ago already left Facebook. Now it's TikTok, it's Instagram, and so on. Finally, internet demands creativity. It needs to change. You have to do new things. It can be reality TV, which is quite exceptional, and therefore teamwork is very much important, and professionalism. People do not accept any longer when the sounds, when the visuals are not of a good quality. It needs to be professional. For ecumenical and inclusive logic, there are no walls on internet. Anybody can come on your website, and that's a big strength, I think, of internet. So it can bring people together. Last year, we published a podcast retreat on love, on loving relation. And we made it in such a way that all kinds of love relations could feel comfortable with the vocabulary and with the way it was being presented. And we also, in the marketing, we also used some pictures of gay couples. And we only got positive remarks with regard to that. Finally, the fifth one, collaboration. It is very important to collaborate within the team. You need a lot of knowledge and different knowledges, but also internationally. If Pray As You Go and all those languages work that well, it is because we work together and we share costs. That makes it possible to have really a professional platform that is the highest standard, because it is shared all over the world by hundreds of thousands of users. We have made maybe you recognize this image. It's an animation we made about Ignatius for the Jubilee. We made it in Amsterdam. It cost us 35,000 euros. 35,000 euros. 17,000 people looked at it in the Dutch version, which would make it cost 2 euros for one user. But from the beginning on, we made it in such a way, it was really conscious that it was language neutral. So it could be translated, the voiceover, in any language. Well, we made 23 versions of it. 23 language versions. It was viewed almost 1 million times all over the world, which made it cost 0.035 euros per viewer. That's a little different from the 2 euros. I come to the end. Digital and physical. It is clear that the digital experience and the experience in the physical environment are different. You cannot compare them. But I think that both can learn from one another. I spoke about the digital transition and the enormous impact it has on all people. So we must take that into account also in places like this one. And I have, for instance, the impression that more and more, just to give one example, in the retreat houses, people have the choice now. The choice between a larger, an ever-growing variety of propositions, even at the same moment. That choice, for instance, is very important. And I already said it, I repeat it, the new languages, in particular the language of internet, is becoming normative through digital, because of the digital transition everywhere. So we really have to take that into account also in the physical environment. Finally, the two, digital and physical, are mainly complementary. We have one retreat house in our region. I spoke with them for preparing this intervention, and they said, you know, for us, it's absolutely not necessary to introduce our retreatants to our digital apostolate. They all know it, and they all use it. Even during the retreats, they continue with pray as you go in the morning. The reverse often is not the case. The dynamics of internet, that's in my region, but I think in other places it's the same, allow a new audience to discover Ignatian spirituality. And the digital offer is generating a growing interest in spiritual exercises, including in the residential variety. Our colleagues in our retreat house told me that, and they say it's due to the internet apostolate, that for the last years, the word Ignatian has become synonymous of interesting, creative, hey, there is something there among or around Ignatian. Our digital apostolate has put Ignatian spirituality again on the agenda of the Christian churches in my region. Before, with our retreat house, we reached out to 400, 500 people a year. Now it's in the tens of thousands of people we reach out to. And this leads to some very interesting evolutions. There is a rejuvenation of the public that takes part in the residential programs. And many of the traditional retreatants grow too old, and they are starting more and more to use a digital product, because in their room, in their house, where they cannot leave anymore, they can very well use that. Conclusion. The new languages of the internet have a predilection for words such as creativity, words as change, adaptation, contextualization, freedom of choice, secularization, trust. I think all of these are concepts with which Ignatian spirituality is familiar. Some even seem ingrained in the DNA of the spiritual exercises. And all of them require a lot of energy and of daring creativity. I think that the pastoral work of the spiritual exercises, both in its physical and in its digital forms, has got a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, NIKOLAAS. Thank you very much. I can see that you are now all immersed into the digital world. So I have to pull you back to this physical world, and let us welcome our next presenter.